Welcome to Global Vision. I am extremely happy to have here with us someone who I would never ever expect to speak with, but is here with us. I'm extremely excited. It's Mark Schaefer, and he is the author of this amazing book that if you read English, please get it. And if not, I'm pretty sure it will be soon in Spanish because it's a no-brainer. If you're in business, you need to read this book. So let me now welcome Mark. It's a pleasure to be for us that you are here with us.
Yeah, this is such a treat because this is the first time we're seeing each other face to face. So this is cool. I'm
Yes,
delighted to be here.
it is cool. You see, I have such an admiration for authors and people who really take the risk to write a book because I know that the process is not easy. We will speak a little bit about that later. That when also I have the opportunity to even speak with the author is even better. But before we go there, I would love that you to tell us a little bit about yourself and about your background because I think your background is very fascinating.
Oh, thank you. Well, I grew up really in the corporate world. I worked for a big Fortune 100 company for many years, and did really every sort of global marketing job you could think of. I had a wonderful opportunity, had a wonderful education. I got my master's degree and had a chance to study under the great American management author and consultant Peter Drucker. I studied under him for 3 years. Also have an advanced degree in organizational development. I started my own business in 2008, really as a marketing consultant, and I started teaching as well. I teach at Rutgers University, and so to teach and to consult, I really needed to learn a lot about social media. So sort of immersed myself in there, started to blog. My blog became popular at businessesgrow.com, and that led to books. And now I've written 9 books, and my latest one, as you mentioned, is Cumulative Advantage, and it's also my best book.
I love that, but I would like to go back in how did you fell in the field of marketing? How that happened? And also I would like to know if being an author, it's really randomness in action. I love that you
Yeah.
mentioned it, randomness in action. So could you please
Yeah.
let us know?
Well, boy, what a wonderful point, Priscilla, to kind of connect the dots here, because that's one of the things that I think is sort of an aha moment for a lot of people when they read my book, is that almost every business success and almost every personal success comes from some random moment. And and it's connected for me because the reason I got into marketing, I was a journalism major and when I was in college. And at the end of my undergraduate time, I took a class in marketing because we had to take a business elective and marketing seemed sort of interesting. So I took this class and I opened up this book. In fact, I still have it. This is the book I had in my class. I went onto eBay to find the original textbook because this is what got me into marketing. Because I opened up the book and Dr. Philip Kotler says marketing is a combination of psychology, sociology, and anthropology.
What a
And
beautiful.
I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I thought, marketing, that's everything human. I just think that's fascinating. And I'm sort of, I was a journalist and sort of an idealist. And I thought I think that's what I want to be. But I was too poor. I was broke. I needed a job. I couldn't change my major. It was too late. So I got into the business world in communications, but my goal was to get into marketing. So eventually I sort of worked my way into marketing, and had a great career. And then sometime in my 30s, the internet was starting to boom. And my boss was like 45 years old and he wasn't going anywhere. I thought, where am I going to go in this company? And I thought, I have an idea. This World Wide Web, I think there could be some business applications for this. So I went to my boss and I said, I would like an AOL account. I'd like to put it on my expense account to explore how we might have business opportunities on the web. After much debate, he wasn't really convinced, but he let me do it. $9 a month. I was the first person in this Fortune 100 company on the internet.
Wow.
I had these ideas of how we could buy and sell scrap more efficiently, and it worked. A few years later, this big company wakes up and realizes we need to have an e-commerce department. Who shall lead it? Oh, Mark, he's been on the internet longer than anybody. You do it. And so I became the director of e-business for this Fortune 100 company. And that led to my career as a digital marketing strategy person. It's all random. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't a dream. It was random. And that's how it worked for me. And that's really how it works for almost everybody.
And to become an author was also the same idea, or how it came about that you start writing books?
Yeah, it really came out of the blog. The blog I started as an experiment. It was I just wanted to see what it was about. If I was going to teach other people about blogging and social media, I had to do it myself. I had to experience it. So I started the blog, and the blog became very popular. And this is a time when social media, all the publishing companies in New York wanted to find somebody to write social media books. And so McGraw-Hill approached me, and they wanted to see my ideas about books. And I observed something, and this was also sort of a random thing, Bisila. This was a time at the start of the internet when power was shifting from Madison Avenue and news companies and bureaus to people. If you had a keyboard and a Wi-Fi connection, you could create content and have a voice. You could create influence in the world. And I saw this happening, and I had this idea of how this entire new world of influence marketing, it was like a whole new opportunity with this shift in power. The power is going to come to the people. The power is going to be with the customers. Wow. So I had this idea, and McGraw-Hill took a risk on it because there wasn't anything like this before. I wrote the first book on influence marketing called Return on Influence. And those ideas came from conversations I had with people who were working in this space, some of the founders, some of the pioneers. And all of a sudden, it was like a lit runway at the airport. Whoop. I knew I could see a vision of where this world was going to go. And I wanted to write a book about it because I was curious. And McGraw-Hill took a big risk on me, and they said, go for it. And that's how the first book started.
Wow, incredible. Still, I mean, everything's random.
Yeah, everything's random. That's not the story we tell.
I know. And this is what is very interesting, what you explain in the book. And I think people should read it for that reason. I would like to know what means cumulative advantage, because for me, it's the first time until I got your book that I know about it.
Well, that's been one of the fun things about this, Bisila, that cumulative advantage is sort of a very famous sociological principle. There's been a lot of research there, but no one's ever really heard of it because, let's be honest, how many of us can name any famous sociological principle? So I started reading about this. I became obsessed because I really think this idea of momentum is important today. As you know, even if you do your best work, even if you're great, there's no guarantee you're going to stand out in this world. And I'm not the kind of person to think, oh, well, we have a problem. I guess we have a problem. I want to figure it out. And I become obsessed until I do. And I think part of the solution is this idea of momentum. So I started learning about this idea that started really in the 1960s. 50 years ago, this research started about cumulative advantage. And what it means is that when someone has some small distinctive advantage over someone else, if you play your cards right, you can build this into an advantage and leave your competitors behind. A very famous example that's easy to understand is Bill Gates. How did Bill Gates become Bill Gates? When he was a teenager, he had access to some of the first computer prototypes. He was doing coding before anybody else. And he played his cards right. And he became Bill Gates. He became Microsoft. And it wasn't because he was a genius. It wasn't because he was rich. It wasn't because he went to Harvard. It's because he had a little advantage that just grew and grew and grew. And he pursued that curiosity. Having a little advantage or having an idea doesn't really mean anything unless you go on that quest and pursue it and try to make it come true.
And what led you to write this book? What was your purpose?
Well, this is why I write every single book. It has to be a big idea that can help people with a problem they have now. And the problem that everyone has right now in business and in marketing, it's this. Everyone needs an answer to this question. One question: how can I be heard? To make it in this world, you need to be found. You need to be seen. You need to be heard. And the amount of competition and the amount of content is literally overwhelming. And let's face it, you and I, even if we're doing great work, we're competing with the Mandalorian, right? We're competing for people's time.
Yes.
And, you know, this is something amazing. Last year, the most popular YouTuber was a guy named Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast made tens of millions of dollars on YouTube last year. On average, it cost him $300,000 to produce one video. He spent $1 million on one of his videos.
Wow.
And it just goes to show you what it takes to get to the top today. Now, I don't have that. I don't know you very well, but I don't think you have that either.
No.
I don't think you can spend $1 million to make a video
For
to be
sure
popular
not.
on YouTube. Yeah. If you have that kind of money, let's talk after the show. There's probably some ways we could work together. But you and I don't have that. And so we need another answer. And really, there is a clue in this research. It shows if you have an advantage and you have these countervailing processes, you can make it too. Even if you don't have $1 million, even if you don't have an Ivy League education or these famous connections, there's a pattern. There's a way that everyone can create momentum. And here's the exciting thing, Bisila, to me. I guarantee when people read this book, they're going to see the world in a different way forever. They're going to start to see these patterns of success, and you're going to go, oh, I see what their advantage was. I see what this theme was. I see how they created awareness. They just mentioned someone who helped them get to the same level. So you start to see these patterns.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it works for everyone.
That's right. And you see, I mean, the difference that I have seen in this book is that normally when you read a business book is because you have a purpose. And sometimes you just go looking for the things. But in this case, in the introduction, I was already hooked. I was like, wow, this is brilliant. And that comparison that you made between you and Tim Ferriss. And the biggest question that I have is why he knows Oprah and you don't?
Yeah.
And how the idea of this comparison came about.
Right. Well, that's the way I start my book. And it's a weird way to start a book.
Indeed.
And I didn't know if it would work, but it was sort of a risk that I took. And here's what this is about. So when I was doing research for this book, I was trying to find examples of people who you would look at them and you'd say, how in the world did they become famous? How in the world did they become successful? You know, Bloomberg keeps this list of the richest people in the world, and 10 of the top 100 richest people in the world grew up in poverty, had no college education, and now they're the richest people in the world. And they all did the same things. There's a pattern to create this momentum. So I was trying to find an example. And I was just curious about Tim Ferriss because he is blowing up. He is everywhere. And so I did some research. I thought, all right, there must have been something in his background that made him a genius. Well, he grew up in a little neighborhood in Long Island. His father, I think, was a business person or something. They didn't have a lot of money. They bought Tim a lot of books. They believed in reading, so that was good. He had a nurturing environment, but he was sickly. He was bullied. He suffered from low self-esteem. He had, and I'm not saying anything he hasn't said it himself because he's been very transparent. He didn't believe in himself. He had business failures. He had psychological breakdowns. He considered committing suicide. When he lost his girlfriend and lost his business, he just gave up and went to Europe to try to figure things out. And that's when he had the idea for the book. And by the way, the idea for his book, The 4-Hour Work Week, which was a New York Times best-selling book, was rejected by 26 publishers. So if you had to place a bet, is this guy going to make it? You'd say no.
Yeah.
Everything was against this guy. But he's huge. Something happened. Something crazy happened. And if we could figure that out, there might be lessons. This guy went from zero to hero. And that's how I show in the book is that this is the way it works for everybody. And if you look at Tim's career, he did it exactly by using this pattern, these 5 steps that I have in the book. So I thought it would be fun as I go through these 5 steps in the book to say, here's how it worked for him. Here's how it worked for me. Why? How come he knows Oprah and I don't? What did he do right and what did I do wrong?
That's great. This is brilliant. Honestly, I find it brilliant. And now I would love that you to share with us what are that 5 steps to really achieve our goals and take, advantage of the momentum.
Well, we already talked a little bit about this idea called initial advantage. And this is what I think is so cool about this book is that there's nothing in this book that anybody can't do. This initial advantage, it comes from something random. You just have to be aware of these opportunities and know when to open the door and know when to close the door and know when to pursue these ideas. Then you have to see, does this idea fit in our world today? Is there a seam of opportunity? And these seam of opportunities are created when there's a fracture in the status quo, like a pandemic. Is that a fracture in the status quo? I predicted last March, Bisila, that there would be more startups in America than any other time in history because everything has shifted. Everything has changed. We all have new needs, unmet, underserved needs and fears and wants. And it came true. There are now more startups in America than all these businesses that have failed. That's a seam. recognizing, is the timing right? And you burst through this seam, and then the momentum begins. Once the momentum begins, how do you get to the next level? People need to know about you. So you need what I call this sonic boom of awareness. And for me as a marketer, this was the most fun part of the book, because I get into new ideas of how things really go viral, and it's not like you think.
Mm-hmm.
The next step is, and this is very powerful, I think it might be one of the most powerful ideas, is that sometimes to get to the next level, you need some help from somebody who's already there. And I talk about a new vision for mentorship. Historically, mentorship has been about a long-term relationship with someone who teaches you something. And it's hard to find someone that's going to say, yeah, I'm going to have a long-term relationship with you. No, I'm too busy. You don't need a teacher. If you need a teacher, go to YouTube. You can learn anything you want. Here's what we need. We need people who can create opportunities, who can open doors at the next level, who can introduce us to people and connections that can spin us into this new level of momentum. That's what mentoring needs to be. And there's an art and science to that I talk about in this chapter in great detail. Now, you're on the move. And the last thing is, you need to keep that momentum going and make good decisions even when things go wrong. It's called constancy of purpose, not panicking, because things always will go wrong. You need to surround yourself with the people and the resources and the ideas to keep you going. You need to have the discipline to do what it takes to keep that momentum going, even when people are trying to push you down, even when bad things happen. You've got to have the discipline to keep on going, have that resilience, and make it to your dreams. And those are the 5 steps.
That's amazing. I think we should all apply, and it's useful for anybody, not just for people who want to be internet entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
Everyone. And what means seam? Because for some of us that we don't know American football, maybe this term is not familiar. So what means seam?
Well, it's something I sort of made up. It was actually, I had an idea 6 or 7 years ago about writing a book just about this topic, because strategy today is different than a lot of people really think it is. Back in the 90s, strategy was really about, a 50-page document that would talk about, we're going to be the lowest price, or we're going to be the most efficient, or whatever we're going to be. And we're going to stick in this lane, and that's our strategy forever. And today, I use this football analogy where in American football, 2 teams line up face to face, strength against strength. And the coaches of the team are actually sitting above the field in a booth. And they're watching the field, trying to see if there's an opportunity. Is there a player on the other side that's overmatched? Are they in the wrong place? Are they tired? Could we take advantage of that and run that ball through that seam as fast as we can, as long as we can? We'll make as much gain as we can. And now let's look for a new seam. That's what strategy is about today. It's not about plodding through plodding through a channel forever. It's about speed and space and time. And when you have that idea and you see that seam, you charge through with all of your might as fast as you can. Take a look at Clubhouse today. Really, really popular, right? Look, they were the first ones to really activate this idea of social audio. There's a fracture in the status quo. There's 20 million people who are unemployed. They got a lot of time on their hands. They're locked in. They miss talking to people. They miss that randomness. They have this opportunity to meet lots of cool new people they'd never have a chance to meet on this app. It's the perfect time. That's the seam. Boom. How are they bursting through? They just got a lot of money. Now, they don't even know right now how they're going to monetize. The key right now is run through that seam as fast as you can and create this cumulative advantage that separates you from your competitors. That's what they're doing right now, because Facebook's going to create a clubhouse, Instagram, whatever. LinkedIn's going to have a clubhouse. They're already talking about it. Clubhouse has got to be the clubhouse, and they've got to now go for it and build that. It's all about momentum. It's only momentum. They're not even worried about money right now. It's about momentum, because if you have that momentum and separate yourself, you'll win. The money will come.
Wow, it's so fascinating, everything that you're saying. But I would like to conclude with one more question. What do you think that is needed to be relevant at this time and age? How do you see the future with all the changes that we are experiencing? What makes someone relevant?
I think it gets down to this. I think being relevant always means applying your core strengths in a way that's needed by the world today. Now, and the world is changing. So that means you might need to change too. Now, let me give you an example. When the pandemic hit, I became a keynote speaker without an audience, a teacher without a classroom, a consultant without customers. Then I got the disease. It hit me hard. I was sick for a month. I had hypoxia. I wasn't getting enough oxygen to my brain. I couldn't think. I couldn't read. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't write. I couldn't work. And when I finally got out of this fog, I realized the world doesn't need me to be a keynote speaker or a consultant right now. I'm a teacher, but the world needs me to teach something else. So all this content I had planned about marketing and strategy, I stopped it. And I started writing about, how do we get through the next year? How do we handle our mental processes? How do we handle this anguish, this grief? How do we deal with this vast uncertainty ahead of us? When will it end? What does it mean? Will I make it? And that's what I concentrated on. And I didn't know how it was going to work, but that's what I needed to do to be relevant. That was my seam at that moment. It was applying my ideas and my strengths to be relevant in that moment. And I think that's what all of us need to do. We are in a world of overwhelming suffering right now. There are just incredible needs. There's incredible new seams being opened. And we just have to think about, where do we fit? How do we help people right now in this time of incredible need and suffering? And to me, that's what relevance really means to me now and as we go forward, because it will continue to evolve and change, and we need to change too.
That's so beautifully said. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for your time. And I must say that I love the book, but the forward really touched my heart. And of course, I would not share it because I want people also have the same experience.
Oh, you mean the chapter 10, the last chapter?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
So inspiring, everything. And
it took me 3 months to write that one chapter.
oh.
It was the hardest writing I've ever done in my life, because it is so very personal.
Yeah, but I think this is exactly because the level of transparency that you've been able to share, that is also generosity, because not everybody wants to be exposed that way. So I really thank you for that. And it was
Thank you.
really beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sure the viewers are going to be as excited as I am to listen to you. And we thank you so much here from Negocios TV and this program, um, Global Vision. We definitely are super grateful for your presence here today.
Thank you. And thank you for reading my book and being prepared with so many wonderful questions. This was a real delight. I'm honored to be here with you.
Thank you.